So Airbnb, many people would say that, or a number of people said it's the worst idea that ever worked. Or at least I can say everyone at the time seemed to say it was the worst idea ever, and it worked. So maybe that's the nice connection. It's the worst idea that ever worked. Um, Airbnb, I'll just do a really quick kind of background before Airbnb. So I'm different than most technology founders insofar that I actually went to art school. So I was an artist by training. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and if you guys know that school, and I studied industrial design. And industrial design, I know they teach that here in Stanford. It's kind of like product design, everything from a toothbrush to a spaceship. They used to say, and everything in between. Bless you. I growing up, I never really thought about being an entrepreneur. I didn't even know that existed. I don't even know if I ever heard the word entrepreneur. That would have been an almost absurd thing to say in upstate New York, where I grew up, use that word. In fact, in hindsight, the only entrepreneur I knew was Bob from Bob's Pizza. And I didn't really want to have a pizza shop, so I don't think it would have occurred to me to start a company. My parents are both social workers. My mom used to have a joke. She said, I chose a job for the love and I made no money, so she choose a job for the money. And I said, well, I'm going to art school. And she said, oh my God, you chose the only path in life that's going to pay less than a social worker because you're going to be an artist and get paid nothing. And so she said, if you do that, make sure you don't move back home, live in my basement, make sure that you get a job one day. And that if you get that job, that make sure that job has health insurance. And this is like a grand ambition for my parents. So it wasn't about starting any kind of big company or scaling up a company. And so I wasn't going to be able to call my parents, oh my God, what do I do? I have 100 employees. How do I scale? That wasn't going to happen in my family. I ended up going to RISD. And the school had a profound impact on me, probably much like here in Stanford, because growing up, you're taught to look straight ahead. Growing up, you don't get rewarded for being disruptive. You just go to the principal's office. And I was there quite often. And so got to RISD, and teachers were like, you're a designer. You can redesign everything around you. You can, basically they're saying is you can change the world. It's not something that most parents tell their kids. You can change the world. They tell you to behave. And so I ended up, one other thing happened at RISD. I met my co-founder, one of my co-founders at RISD named Joe Gebbia. And one day Joe says, Brian, I think one day we're going to start a company together. Well, I'm living in LA, working as an industrial designer. And I remember my life, and you may be confronted these decisions where everything in front of me in my life looks like everything behind me. In other words, the road is like a disappearing road into the horizon. And it kind of terrified me because it was that job with health insurance. And at RISD, I was told, no, I can do anything. I can change the world, and you're not doing that. And so I had this impulsive moment where I go into work, and my roommate or my friend Joe at RISD was trying to convince me to leave my company and go to San Francisco, and we were going to start a company. We had no idea what this company was going to be. We just thought, we'll think of the big idea. And so one day, I go to work, I quit my job, and I'm living in a house with a bunch of friends that moved across the country with me. And I say, okay, guys, I'm going to leave. And they thought I had an early life crisis. They thought they need to have an intervention. I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I took some old foam mattress. I rolled it up in the backseat of an old Honda Civic. And with $1,000 in the bank, I drive up to San Francisco. This is October 2007. I get to San Francisco, and Joe tells me the rent is $1,150. I didn't have enough money for rent. That weekend, this international design conference was coming to San Francisco. We went to this conference website. And we noticed on the conference website, they had a hotels tab. We clicked on the hotels tab. And in the hotels tab, there are always hotels. And next to every hotel said sold out, sold out, sold out. And at that point, we just had this idea. We said, well, designers need a place to stay. We literally have no money. In fact, I don't know how I'm going to make rent. So we thought, what if we just created a bed and breakfast for the design conference? Naturally, that's maybe not what most of you would think to do, but that's what we thought to do. Go to RISD, you're like, I got to create a solution. So we thought, let's create a designer bed and breakfast for the conference. Unfortunately, I didn't have any beds. Joe he just moved up there. It would be like a floor and breakfast. That's not the best thing. And so Joe had 3 air beds. He had gone camping and he had kept some air beds. And we pulled the air beds out of the closet. We inflated the air beds and we called it the Air Bed and Breakfast. And that's where the name comes from, airbedandbreakfast.com. So a lot of people hear the name, they think it's Air is the platform and BB is the house. No, it's just air beds. That's all this was. This was just air beds. And so we ended up hosting 3 people from around the world, a 35-year-old woman from Boston, a 45-year-old father of 5 from Utah, and a 30-year-old from India. And now I got to tell you, the reason we started doing this is because we thought it was funny, cool, and we make money because we had to make rent. There's something that happens though. When somebody lives with you, it's kind of like the arc of a friendship gets contracted from a year to a day. In other words, if you were to meet somebody, maybe here at Stanford or in the real world, and you get to know them, how much time does it take to like invite them over to your house and have dinner with them? It might take like months, even a year. Like you don't just get to know people. And what it did, we realized, is it contracted this year-long friendship into a couple days. And so these people came as strangers. They literally left as friends. We ended up keeping in touch with them. In fact, one of the guests ended up inviting me to his wedding. The other guest, this woman, moves from Boston to San Francisco. And I think we're realizing there's a bigger idea here. I asked Joe, I said, who's the best engineer you know? Because Joe and I were designers. Joe could do front-end design, engineering, but we were both designers and product people. And Joe said, well, my old roommate, Nate, is. Nate, Joe met on Craigslist. He went to Harvard. He's a computer scientist. And so the three of us got together and we said, we basically had this core idea. We said, what if you could book someone's home the way you could book a hotel anywhere in the world? And that's basically how it started. The one caveat I'll make to the story is after that very first weekend, there wasn't this like flash that, oh my God, this is going to be huge. We actually didn't do anything for 4 months. In fact, the thing we don't usually talk about is after that, we started exploring creating a roommate matching website because we thought no one would ever do this Air bed and breakfast thing, but people need roommates. We thought roommates meets Craigslist meets Facebook, like roommates with profiles. Until one day we typed roommates.com in and realized somebody had built that site. And this was like 3 weeks or 4 weeks later. And I said, why the hell did anyone type that site in the first day? Because I just wasted 4 weeks. So we didn't know what to do. We went home for Christmas and people are like, what are you working on? And I'm like, I didn't want to tell everyone in my family I was unemployed. So I said, I'm an entrepreneur. Of course, my mom said, you're actually unemployed. I said, no, I'm actually an entrepreneur. And that's also what I learned when you're starting out. The difference between unemployed and being an entrepreneur is in your head. It's usually a mindset. And I was in my head an entrepreneur. And they said, well, what are you entrepreneuring? And I'm like, because it wasn't really a common word there. And I said, well, I got this thing, Air bed and breakfast. They're like, Air bed and what? And we just started to get used to pitching it. We're like, maybe we should actually do this. And it was still not obvious. The original idea was air beds for conferences. So we ended up launching at South by Southwest in 2008. And the whole idea was if you're going to a conference, you don't have a lot of money, you could sleep in someone's home on their air bed. And we ended up with the second version of the website we built when we had 2 customers, and I was one of them. So that's kind of how it started. And it wasn't the Facebook story 2 weeks. It was a longer road.